Hey, welcome back. So, you saw that I posted my other video with the Western United States Mundane Astrology report only because just too long-winded to do both of them at a time. So I'm back immediately, actually. I just got some water. And we're going to try to get through the Eastern United States chart because I've looked at it more than the other one. So I think I can say a bit more easily about it. There's a lot of moving parts, isn't it? But, so thanks for coming back. I appreciate your viewership. Thank you for liking my videos. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. Thank you for everything that you do. We're going to look at it here. So, of course, we got the Aquarius rising chart still in place. The first thing that happens is that Venus moves into the 12th house. The 12th house is the house of isolation, hidden enemies, a dark, isolated place to walk through, generally. And Venus is indicating the 4th house of the homeland, the people's castle, essentially, and the 9th house, the foreign interests, the travel, foreign traveling. So anyone that would be traveling relative to the United States, this part of the United States, doing foreign traveling at this time, well, the significator of foreign travel here is now in the 12th house. So there's trouble there. There's isolation. There's a sense of being hidden or concealed there. And I'd like to pray to God before I go any further that He'd give me and us wisdom and understanding to contemplate these mysteries to the glory of His name. In Jesus' name, amen. So we also, The other main thing is that the inner planet, Mercury and Mars, are in the 10th house, where the Sun is. And the Sun generally indicates the administration of the government. The 10th house itself is more about the government itself, like the structure or the system. Mercury is ruling the 8th house and the 5th house, so that's debt, losses on the 8th house side. And on the 5th house side, you have children, recreation, love. So these two topics are the main things that are coming up to this Mars, and Mars is, of course, the ruler of the 10th house and the ruler of the 3rd house, being the government on one side and the streets, or the neighborhood. So these topics will get very loud as Mercury makes the conjunction to Mars and squares Saturn in the 1st house. So the 1st house is indicating the people themselves, their condition, and Saturn is the ruler of that. Saturn is also the ruler of the 12th house, where Venus is. So the main malefic effect is from Mars and Saturn, right? Mercury is adding what he can, or his topics, to this mix, right? So, in our government now, in our Supreme Court, we have, topics of the debt ceiling that have to come up, and also topics related to reproductive rights and sexual health and rights. And the rights that people have to maybe not have their children vaccinated or so. Things of that nature, relative to the way the government is doing things at this time. And the government is in more of a weakened condition here because being in the 10th house, the government itself is working very well in its own way here, but the administrators themselves are not in the best position, the Sun being in Scorpio. And the Sun will be squaring Jupiter in the 1st house as well. So the actual administration comes down on the people's society and what they actually have as the Sun moves through the square to Jupiter. But back to Saturn and Mars here. So that 10th house, first house square there is the government itself coming down on the way that people are trying to structure themselves, or people are doing their lives in a very Saturnine way here, and the government is irritating that extremely here on the 7th in topics related to debt, to children, to the everyday neighborhood environment. The sun here is also ruling the 7th house. So the 7th house ruler is squaring the 2nd and 11th house ruler on, let's see, that's on the 15th. We'll advance this a little bit. So after the fallout of what the government is doing here, the administration and also the way people are interacting on a one-on-one basis is coming to a hard aspect, a square, with the ruler of the 11th house, of society, of what people actually have. So there's tension around one-on-one relationships about money and about groups of people. And I guess I could mention here that the South Node is still in Sagittarius here in the 11th house. So there's a sense of things being drained out around the way that we interact in society, the way that we even have a society. Like there's even a forum to engage and be social. Like the 11th house is like the group interactions, or the interactions that you have as a person within a group context, right? So there's definitely something missing there, as we all know. Or maybe you don't. I mean, maybe you may not live in this part of the United States, so maybe you don't know. But there is a sense that things have been continually draining out there, and there's like a sense of there's like a missing piece there, right? Okay, so that definitely gets very loud, and there's more conflict. There's very much conflict between the administration and the government with the people and their aid and so on. But also there's an element where the government is coming up against the hidden enemies of the people, where Venus is. And of course Venus is concerning foreign travel, home, domestic interests. So we will see the government and the administration inflict whatever they will on them, whoever they will be, seeing that Venus is indicating enemies here, so foreign enemies, enemies both foreign and domestic here. You can see the government really coming against them. But Saturn is the people and the foreign, and the people's enemies, so there's a sense that we're all kind of in this thing, even though it may not be fair, really. Okay, so after that, Mercury will also make a square to Jupiter after the Sun does. So Mercury is concerned with children primarily, and recreation, and these debts, or things that are being destroyed in the mundane world here. So the ruler of, think about it as the 8th coming against the ruler of the 2nd. There are losses that are happening to the people's aid here that people are dealing with. There's destruction associated with the government, debt associated with the government that is impinging upon the significator of the people's aid in their society. On the 21st, the Sun moves into Sagittarius. It meets with the North Node there in the 11th house. And then Mercury immediately moves into Sagittarius over the north-south node. I mean, it's this both the south node for both the south node for both of those. They move over it, and the Mercury conjoins the Sun here. So the 8th house and 5th house ruler is conjoined to the 7th house ruler. So people are the people and the government in this social context are concerned with the debt, taking care of our children and what we love, the people we love. But they go through this very dim sort of place here, and that's associated with this lunar eclipse that I continue to forget to mention. This lunar eclipse is here in the 4th house, making a square to Jupiter in the 1st house and opposing the Sun in the 10th. So it's a very strong, very angular eclipse, being that it's aspecting these planets in the other angles, the 10th and the 4th. So it's a very critical moment for the homeland, the domestic situation, what people have, what they fortify themselves with. Their fortifications are in a way eclipsed. And so that happens, but then the Mercury, or the Sun and then Mercury move through the south node. So there's this murkiness. We're in eclipse season. This is eclipse energy around the Sun and Mercury there. But when we get to December 3rd, there's a lunar eclipse, a partial solar eclipse in the 11th house. Mercury is there. Mercury is talking about the 8th house and the 5th house, the Sun, the 7th, and the Moon, the 6th. So there's an eclipse of the Sun. Now, the Moon and the Sun meet in the sky every month, but this is significant because the light of the Sun is being hidden by the Moon. If that's how it works, I think it is. So 6th house concerns overtake 7th house concerns here in a way that has a lasting effect. Being an eclipse, it's a major unexpected event in society. It happens in the social arena, and it's concerned with children, the debt, one-on-one interactions, and what we are doing every day as a people, the Moon being indicative of the 6th house right now. All right, so we get into still the end of November here. Well. Yeah, we could talk about how Mercury and the Sun are sextile to Saturn. Saturn is the 1st house ruler, so there is a sense of, even though this is an eclipse, like things working well with the people significator. Somehow debts are working well with the Saturn theme here of the people and their enemies. And one-on-one interactions, like the 1st house and the 2nd house significator are in a sextile, so there's a better opportunity for people to have a friendly interaction, perhaps, even though this is an eclipse. So this could be an extreme situation, like a party. Really, this is a Saturday, it's in the 11th house, so just like an over the top party, but Saturn is there, I think, stabilizing it. Maybe we all really need that. I'm not necessarily saying you should go to a party on this day. It's just kind of what it looks like. Might be a bad idea. I mean, be careful what you do on the eclipses, because things will be changing in your own chart, well, probably not a party, but it is like a very dynamic change in society. But let me move on here. On December 8th, Mars will make a square to Jupiter. He is in the later degrees of Scorpio. Mars here is integrating the government and the streets. Jupiter, the society and the people's money. So there's a disconnect between people's money and what we have, like what people have, what people's money is, and the system, and it's the way that we're doing, I guess, our business on the streets here comes into a head. On the 11th, Mercury will make a sextile to Jupiter, and this Mercury in the 11th house is sextiling Jupiter in the 1st. The Sun is also coming up to a sextile to Jupiter. I guess I didn't write that down, but obviously the Sun will be as well. So, I think this is a better version of what we saw earlier with Mercury and the Sun sextiling Saturn. Much more hopeful, much more possible, much more aware that this is going somewhere. But we can see that Mars is right on the south node here and moving into Sagittarius. So on the days after that, Mars will be in the anaretic degree while the moon is in Aries. So I think this will be a very notable day for the things that come about on the streets, in society, with things that the government is doing. But the south node can kind of drain out whatever's there, so Mars might become a little bit invisible here. But another thing about this day is that Mercury, while Mars is about to go into Sagittarius, Mercury is about to go into Capricorn. So Mars goes into the 11th and Mercury into the 12th. So Venus has been in the 12th. She's been slowing down in the 12th. So things relative to the 9th house themes and the 4th house themes are slowing down. They're not really going anywhere. They need to go through a transformational process before we are moving ahead with those themes. And we will be, because the chart won't change before Venus is through that shadow period, if you follow me. But Mercury will be in the 12th. Mercury is, again, about the 5th and the 8th here. So there are enemies relative to the 5th and the 8th here for the people. We can go back here because I want you to consider that on the day of this eclipse, this is the date that they set for the debt ceiling. They moved the date back for the debt ceiling thing to December 3rd. So that is the eclipse. But then, and I mean to bring that up because Mercury is dealing with the 8th house there, and the eclipse is there on the 8th house ruler. Mercury moves into the 12th house, so these concerns with debt and so on become much more I'm not sure where the word is there, but they become more hidden. They go into the background, or they otherwise become very, very dire. They go into the background, but they're also like very serious and dire in their way, with planets moving into the 12th house. And Venus stationing retrograde in the 12th as well, for her own topics. Okay. The Sun will move into Capricorn, so the Sun will move into the 12th house on December 21st. And on December 22nd, the North and the South Node will change signs, so the North Node will now be in the 4th house, and the 10th house will contain the South Node. for now. Okay. So one of the final things we have is that Jupiter will be moving through the square to the north and the south node. He'll be moving into the second house right after that. So he's in this first house making a square sorry about that, I had to think about positions. You're making a square there to this fourth house and the 10th house. So there's a moment where things are pushing ahead, but they look very critical with the second house themes and the 11th house themes. And it's relative to where we're going to be having the eclipses in the future in Scorpio and Taurus, even though the houses will be different by then. Yeah, very critical moment for the second house themes there. With the way people are building their foundation there, looks like as the North Node transits through the fourth house, people will be wanting to build on that, build up their foundation. And the ruler of the fourth house, Venus, is going through this process, and Mercury is right there too. So Mercury and Venus are on the same point pretty much as Jupiter is about to pass into Pisces. So Jupiter will now be in his own house, in the second house, bringing a lot more dignity to what Mars is doing in the 11th house there, and also to the second house in general. Okay. Oh, I'm getting tired. That's pretty much it. I think the last thing is Mars. Well, Mars in the 11th house there is, not really turning a very nice face to society. So, I mean, since Mars ingressed the 11th house, people were less inclined to show any pity or compassion to each other, more of a, continuing with people just not really getting along in society here. Mars in the 11th in Sagittarius, I'm not sure how to say about that, because Mars in Sagittarius really wants to go, really wants to get out of here. So getting out of society, just moving away from friendship, unfortunately, for the moment. But at the same time, the 11th house is more dignified now, so people will be more inclined to be friendly, but there's still a sense of dissension there. But Mercury will be in the first house as well after that, so more prominent with the 5th house and 8th house themes. So, but as a last final thing, Mars will make a sextile to Saturn there in the first house, so I want to say that the way people are behaving in society is pretty hard on them. Well, people are able to work with it. We're able to work with the way that we're kind of just moving past each other, moving through society without much effect, I guess. Because people will be able to move ahead with their second house, the second house things, at least for the next few months. So, well, I hope that was helpful. Hope you got a lot out of that. I did, for sure. I know there's more we could have talked about, but it's already too long. I'm not adept enough to really tell you anymore. But we do end December with Venus, the ruler of travel, the 9th, higher education, the 9th, home, the 4th house, being retrograde in the 12th. So it really does become a more dire situation for trying to travel. I would not try to travel, doing any long trips here during this time. People probably will be wanting to move, but it is things are changing in terms of how travel is done and how home life things are done here. So, hope that was good for you. Hope you got something from that. Thank you for listening to my podcast. God bless you, and I'll catch you on the next one.